Now the setup that we're using to do the mash for making a distilled spirit is really no different than what a home brewer would use to make his beer. I have purchased a Tall Boy stainless steel brew kettle, and this one comes with a built-in thermometer, although not entirely necessary. To agitate the mash, I went to my local hardware store, and for the sum of $9 and some odd cents, I purchased a paint agitator, which fits onto the end of my DeWalt electric drill. This thing works like a charm for agitating the mash. Now I'm working with rye, and so I'm using two different enzymes. I'm using an alpha amylase OptiMash from White Labs in California. And to make the rye break down properly, I have managed to get my hands on this darker colored liquid, which is a viscofirm or a viscobuster, and it breaks up the beta-glucan gum in the rye, and rye is notorious for beta-glucans, which make it very sticky and very gummy to work with, and so the viscobuster should help to thin it out. Now for a source of heat, I have simply got a burner that came with a turkey deep fryer apparatus from Walmart. I threw away the stainless steel cooking pot, and I simply kept the three-legged contraption and the burner, which hooks up, of course, to propane. Now what we're going to do is we're going to bring our water, and I'm using a water to grain ratio of approximately 4 to 1. I can add a little bit more as I go. And a quick word about water. I live in an area where the tap water is notoriously bad. It's an agricultural area. We have a lot of nitrates and sulfates and what have you in the water. The water piping in this community is old, and so you run the risk of some heavy metal contamination in your drinking water. What I have simply done is gone to my local water supply store, and I've purchased a 10 micron carbon block filter. So the water that I'm using in the mash has been passed through the 10 micron carbon block filter, and that removes the chlorine, any of the heavy metals, and any of the typical bad taste that we associate with tap water. And remember that yeast, when it comes to conducting its fermentation, does rely on the inorganic elements in the water, such as potassium, magnesium, zinc, calcium, and so on. And so by passing it through a 10 micron filter, you keep those minerals intact, but get rid of all of the bad, distasteful stuff. What we're going to do with the mash is heat it up to around about 62 degrees Celsius. I've already added a little bit of my viscobuster. I'm soon going to add my alpha amylase, and once we start to see the rye start to break down and get less thick, then I'm going to add just a little bit of my 6-row malted barley and let it rest for a while to let all of the enzymes work together to complete the conversion of starch into fermentable sugar. Okay, so the temperature of our mash is now very close to 65 degrees centigrade, and what we've recently added in the past few minutes is some of the synthetic alpha amylase from White Labs. I've added just a little touch more, like 1/8 of a teaspoon more of the viscobuster, and I've also added about 3/4 of a teaspoon of something called amyloglucosidase, which will further help in breaking down the rye and some of the beta-glucans. Now at this point what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a little bit of my 6-row malted barley, because recall that this recipe is 95% rye, 5% malted barley, and I'm using the 6-row because it does have a slightly higher enzyme content than a standard 2-row malted barley. Okay, so the heat's been turned off. We're sitting at 65. We've got all of our enzymes added. We've got our malted barley added. Now I'm simply going to let this entire mash sit for perhaps the better part of an hour and let those enzymes fully do their job and completely digest all of that carbohydrate and convert it into fermentable sugar.